Welcome to the Real Recovery Show. We air every Friday at noon, and I think we're nearing our 30th episode. This has been quite a year so far. Amazing conversations with people, getting to know people even within our own recovery community that I never knew so much about before. We have some very powerful people in our recovery community, people who have really done a lot to help people to heal. And there's nothing for me, there's nothing as a higher calling than walking through something and then helping to shine the light so somebody else can see the way. Today's topic is on self-esteem. And I've gone through a lot of redefining over the years onto what self-esteem really is. When I was a little girl, I had extremely low self-esteem. My mom was an ex-model. She met my dad on a rebound. They got married. She was unhappy. She wanted to get a divorce. She felt she couldn't do that. Then she found out she was pregnant with me. She felt that she didn't want to do that either. And she really struggled with getting an abortion or not. And then decided to have me. She told herself, maybe this will fix the situation. Why my story starts there is because when my mom ended up having me, she was so overwhelmed and really was not ready mentally for this. And so she had this belief that giving birth to me ruined her life. It was now going to force her to stay married to a person she didn't feel like she wanted to be married to. And so, you know, a child picks up on this stuff. My mom also said things like, I wish you were never born. What good are you? You're lazy. You're a leech. You're an actress. You're a drama queen. And when I started school, I had a really hard time socializing with the kids. I ended up being that kid that every school has, the one that I was never shoved into a locker, but I had that experience. I wasn't allowed past the first two rows of the bus. I got called fat and ugly, which I was neither, but I just had no sense of self-worth, no belief in my value, that I was like a sponge. I believed my mom when she said that I ruined her life. I believed the kids when they said that I was fat and ugly. I felt like I just, there must be something wrong with me. I told myself something that gave all this so much more power. I said, wow, that's my mother. She must know the truth about me. If she's saying that I'm not lovable, then I must really not be lovable. And that idea, that giving another person authority and power over my identity, over my narrative, over my value, my self-worth, I had two reactions to it. One was I either needed to be the best at everything so that I can make up for it. And included in that was also being my mom's therapist, which she never asked for verbally, but which I just decided I needed to do, because if I could fix her, maybe then if she could love me, if I can fix her and she can love me, then maybe I'll be fixed, which was the core start of all my codependency, which was a fun ride. I was born in 1971, and I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and we had tape cassettes and VHS and Betamax tapes, and I would watch and listen to motivational seminars and read self-help books, and I would write poems, and I just really truly believed there was something wrong with me. I became suicidal when I was 12. I became fully addicted. I had addictions to food and masturbation. I was very much addicted to anybody saying a compliment to me, but I also inwardly didn't believe anything that people would say when they said nice things. And I just ended up drinking, then later on smoking pot, doing pills, and becoming bulimic, had an exercise addiction. I became later on a model and a stripper, which I've talked about in previous episodes. I became a workaholic and did crazy things like take 3 years of school in the same year, and then just be like in a horrible depression. I had suicidal ideations for most of my life, and I grew up in New York, where sarcasm is normal, and in fact, if you don't know sarcasm and you live in New York, there's something wrong with you. I'm just kidding. But like when I was growing up in New York, people would say shaming things in jest to each other, and rib each other and be sarcastic. And man, I was walking around with my skin on inside out. And somebody would say something, and even if they were legitimately kidding, a part of me would believe it. Like, why would you say that? Whatever it is. And man, I was that girl that if somebody could tell me 10 compliments and 1 insult, and I would barely hear the compliments and just focus on that insult. I would have 10 people who liked me necessarily when I was an adult, and 1 person who had an issue with me, and I couldn't let that go. There was just such an attachment to needing approval because of my inherent low self-esteem. And I really believed that there was, like, even not having high self-esteem, I believed that was something wrong with me. Like, I just needed to I just needed to believe, I just needed to force myself to believe. I needed to force myself to believe that I was worth it, but inwardly I felt like a fraud. And, like when you're listening to this, everybody's story is going to be different. And just my best advice to anybody is just to listen for the similarities. I'm not saying that all this stuff happened and like anybody should feel sorry for me. Actually, quite the opposite. Although I did have that agenda for a long time, I did want people to feel sorry for me for what had happened. But actually, I have a whole different view of it now, and that's what today's episode is about. How to heal, what comes from something like that, why we even believed stuff like that, and how we can repair our self-esteem and where our self-esteem truly needs to come from. So today's episode is just going to be Tay-Tay and I.
Yay.
And we're going to be sharing because Tay-Tay is somebody I've known for years, and I've seen her change her whole inner dialogue, how she treats herself, how she treats her body, how she talks about herself, how she interprets her environment has changed radically. And her whole energy has gotten better and become more radiant because of it. And we may end up having tears in this episode, just so you know, because
in the first 30 seconds.
In the first 30 seconds, because it is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
When you walk through this world, your whole experience is based on, no matter, is your purpose in this world and who you are. And if you don't know who you are, and the story you have about yourself is toxic, it's like living with a very abusive roommate and not being able to leave the house. Everywhere you go, there you are. And if your head is giving you such negative feedback,
mm-hmm.
it affects your work, it affects your time alone, it affects your relationships, it affects everything. It affects whether or not you get up and do something, or if you talk yourself out of it. It affects everything. And so I'd be hard-pressed to find anybody in recovery that doesn't have some sort of negative self-talk.
Oh, for sure.
Especially even sometimes into recovery, working some of that stuff out.
Yeah. I was thinking about when you were talking about like your childhood and stuff, and how different our childhoods are in a lot of ways, but how similar they are in a lot of ways too. Luckily, I was good at sports and music, and so I didn't have some of the same experiences you had. but that negative self-talk is something that I always struggled with, and it came from that family. Like it came from that home. And not that my family is horrible. I enjoy time with my mom now, but I was thinking about like, I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. Sorry.
She always gets distracted when she compares my 70s, 80s to her 80s, 90s.
Yeah, because I graduated in 2001. Graduated high school in 2001. But most of my schooling was the 90s, and starting school in the late 80s, dyslexia wasn't really. It was either like, oh, if you're dyslexic, you're stupid and you need to be in the stupid classes. And I couldn't be that person because my sister was just so smart and good at everything and never got a B. And so like I had to like hide this disability I had and learn how to do things a different way. And my dad would call me stupid a lot because it was hard for me to read. I still can't spell. And I can actually spell. It's just like if I write it down on a piece of paper, what I see is not what you see to this day. And so I'm grateful for spell check and autocorrect and all of those kinds of things. Grammarly is my best friend. I mean, like, but, and I'm a professional writer now. Like, so it's a really funny journey. But like, when I was little, I had one of those creative minds and I just wanted to write. And I remember in second grade writing this story, The Mall Club. It was a series of stories. My second grade teacher thought it was the greatest thing that ever happened, and my father thought I was an idiot for doing it. And I just remember that piece of like never being good enough, super young, and always comparing myself to my sister, who just excelled in school and never really had to try because she was just smart, And now I know that I'm super smart, and it's funny because growing up, like now that we're adults, because I'm 40 now, and so she's 41, almost 42, and like we were just like hearing her talk about like my creativeness and how she doesn't have that piece. It's just interesting to me that she sees things about me that she wishes she had in her that I didn't know back then. But like back then it was just so hard for me to like compete because I was 2 years behind her in school, and we've only lived in one city in our lives, and so growing up, like I would always be compared to her. Like, why aren't you as good as Lenore? Like, why don't you do as well as her? Like, not just with my parents, but with my teachers.
Right.
Like, like oh, we had your sister. We know what it's going to be like with you, but it wasn't like that with me. And so yeah, those kinds of things are tough, and that did carry on, through my life. But I did have some things that I was better at than her, and I would shove them in her face, and which wasn't a good thing either. And then
this brings up a good point. It does lend itself to being competitive. Needing so badly to be better than, or to say, see, look how good I am at this. Like, acknowledge this. It's like, it's interesting that when somebody is super competitive, basing their self-worth on whether or not they win, whether or not they're right, it creates such a defensive attitude, right? And what's happening though is that the war isn't really outside of us. It's not that, who is it that's supposed to hear how good we are and how amazing we are for us to finally get it? The war is internal.
Yeah.
It's because the part of the mind believes that we're not good enough.
Yeah.
And the other part's going, I don't believe you. I'm going to prove to you that I am good enough. See, I'll show you. I'm going to get this award. I'm going to win this thing. I'm going to get this accolade. Well, and to outrun the belief that we already have in the mind that says we're not good enough.
Well, and what's funny is I actually recently heard somebody speaking that said that they were super competitive out of fear. And it hit me in a way that I wasn't prepared for it to hit me, because I didn't realize that fear drove so many things in my life. And I knew that it drove a lot, but like even the competitive nature of myself, because I so desire for you to love me. Like I so desire for you to want me to be around, because I didn't feel that when I was growing up. I didn't feel like people that loved me when I was growing up until, you know, unless I was giving them something, typically sexually. Like that was the only time I really felt like people loved me, was like, you know. And so yes, I was popular in school with guys because I was easy, you know. So like, but with the girls not so much, like, you know, because I was easy. And so yeah, it's a really hard thing, and there is a fear behind it. Like there is a fear to do the things that we did. I started burning really, really young. And I started, you know, in middle school. I was in 6th grade, I believe. I was dating this boy, and he would go home and get a bottle of pills that was just mixed pills, you know, and bring them to me at school. And that was when I started really using. I was like 12, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I had drank before that, but like, I just would do things that I thought I needed to do to make people like me.
We wouldn't have needed to necessarily change the way we felt if we didn't already feel like we weren't good enough in that moment, no matter what. And in recovery, you hear people talking about this all the time, that when they drank or they did drugs, it's like they lost all that self-consciousness, you know. So obviously, if that's one of the reasons why some of us drank and did drugs, obviously that's one of the problems. Yeah. And so that we need to address when we're in recovery. And really at the core level, in recovery, we say that there really is only a fear I'm not going to get what I think I need. I'm going to lose something that I think I have, and I'm not going to be liked, you know. And so when we have this association so early on in our development that whatever it is, this person had this negative view of me, and I'm not loved by them. Your father calling you stupid, and you not feeling accepted and loved by him. And it's this core need to feel like we're joined with each other and that we're loved, right?
Right.
And for me, it was, I need to make up for being born. I need to make up. I need to really earn my place in this world, you know, to make up for it. And, you know, I really truly believe that what started me off wanting to be a healer in this world gave a lot of momentum, because I was trying to outrun that idea that I wasn't good enough.
Right.
But it's no longer what drives me.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm grateful to have that kind of force, you know, driven, but it's coming from a much deeper place now. I mean, it probably always was also coming from that place, but it's not coming from I need to make up for something. Yeah. I have forgiven my mother. I have seen my part in my self-esteem. The fact that I believed her. The fact that I would give anybody outside of me power to tell me my worth. You know, like anybody. Relationships, everything that I was doing, looking for approval for so long. God, that's so exhausting. And not having to do that now is I'm so grateful for. So, and you know, when I became an adult, I would have a job and I would be afraid of not being seen as good enough, not being seen as lazy, being seen as somebody who was not worth keeping around. You know, like the way this tape just kept translating, and the fear of abandonment I had in all my relationships. So I would people please, you know, and I would be so focused on other people because I would be so afraid that somebody was going to leave me again.
And for me, it wasn't so much of like being afraid people would leave so I'd people please. It was being afraid I would leave so I'd get super selfish and self-centered and self-seeking, and like, what do I need to do to make them stay, from a place of selfishness, not from a place of serving. And so like for me it was a completely
Explain
that. Like for instance, you know, I will like lie about things so that I can get my way. Like I will, or I'll buy somebody something super extravagant to keep them around, you know, or I don't know, like I would just do things where it was like
Giving to get.
giving to get. Like it was always about giving to get. Like it wasn't out of selflessness. Like, and
It wasn't selfless for me either. I was people pleasing is not altruistic. People pleasing is, who do I need to be so that you won't leave me? You know, people pleasing is the opposite of knowing who you really are, what your true yes is, what your true no is. Which is why in the reparation of my self-esteem, it had to be to learn how to truly own my yes.
Yeah.
And truly honor my no. And it took a lot, because my mind was like, no, I feel to say no, but if I say no, they'll leave me, or they'll judge me, or they'll make fun of me. There was always this little girl inside of me, terrified in the corner of my mind, that if I actually owned my truth and valued myself and acted like someone who valued myself, like that I would end up getting hurt.
Yeah.
Getting abused physically again, getting abused mentally, whatever it was, I was terrified of it. And so I didn't believe that I deserved more. And it's so interesting how low self-esteem, sometimes people don't even realize they have low self-esteem, but if you look at the way you treat your body, if you look at the way you treat your life, what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, would somebody who has high self-esteem do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think about like the healthiest I was ever, like physically, was the deepest I was in my addiction, you know? And I wasn't actually healthy physically. I was just going to the gym 4.5 hours a day and doing ephedrine, and, you know, so I looked apart, but I wasn't actually healthy. I wasn't in a healthy relationship. I didn't love myself. I didn't know what love was. I didn't know who I was. I was, you know, just this like shell that was trying to figure out how to find a love that I didn't feel like I ever got growing up. And
this is a good topic. So under the title of self-esteem, there's a lot of emphasis on what we look like, right? And there'll be the outside of us wanting to look like we have it all together, which is one layer of our false self, the one we want to present to the world. And then there's the other layer of the false self, which is full of the shame tapes, full of the ideas of who we think we really are, that we want to keep everybody at an arm's distance, never let people know certain things, maybe lie, maybe not offer information, maybe have secrets, whatever. Maybe just keep everybody at an arm's distance so nobody finds out that we're really not worth it. And so we have this need even in our society. This is not just with addicts and alcoholics. This is so prevalent with all of our magazines about what we're supposed to look like and what kind of relationships we're supposed to have, and the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence stuff and the degrees and the money, and you know, and look at this nice car that's out now, and oh, I really need that to be happy. And we're so conditioned to believe that our happiness lies in what we look like and what we have in our bank account and what our relationship is, because inherently we are not building upon what our true worth really is coming from.
And then you get those things. Like, you get the degree, and you get the relationship, and you get the house, and you get the 4 cats and a dog, and you get the things, and then you need some help, and you're like, I can't go to people. I have this, and this. I checked all the marks. Like, I checked all the boxes. That I'm
supposed to be happy, so why am I not happy?
I'm supposed to be perfect now. Like, right. I won the game.
And you see people who just even recently, you know, committed suicide, who on the outside look like they had it all together.
Twitch. Like, I mean, yeah. I think of that name, like, I mean, that, like, he was on Ellen for years. You know what I'm saying?
So it's clear that a lot of times, this is why they say in recovery, don't compare your insides to somebody else's outsides.
Truth.
Because while you might be listening to your shame tapes and your low self-esteem dialogue, you might also be buying into the outer part of the false self that somebody else is showing you.
Well, and we didn't have like what high school kids have today with like the Instagram and the Twitter and I mean I guess those aren't cool anymore, the Snapchat and the TikTok. Like, you know, we didn't have this other like
we didn't even have cable back then.
we had Betamax.
Just so you know.
We had Betamax.
Yeah.
But we didn't have this other fake image. We didn't have the fake image is what I'm trying to say. That was blown out of proportion. Like, that was all over. Like, you could...
Really?
I don't think we did.
Oh,
like,
we did. We had Barbie dolls. And
but
we
that's
had...
what I'm talking about of actual people that you know.
Yeah, we had TV. We had awards, like, when TV started. We had magazines and newspapers.
No, I'm talking about, like, your friends at school. Like, kids.
I grew up in Long Island, New York, which is one of the richest areas on Long Island, and I promise you we had it in school. Okay. We had it what people wore, the nice outfits, the cars that their parents drove, the status. We had that. We had the I'm better than you growing up in school. We had that.
Well, we had the I'm better than you growing up in school, but that's not what I'm talking about. Like, you'll see, like, kids that are super, like, they have all these followers, and then they're, like... killing themselves is what I'm talking about. Like there's like a fake persona.
The layout of the experience is different, but it's the same experience. Okay. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, the shame, the insecurities, the who do I need to be when I grow up, and how do I not stand out so that I get called out? How do I stand out in a good way if I have to stand out? Like, we have that. We've always had that. That's just been the American way.
Yeah.
You know, it's competition, you know, even the idea of the American dream, you know, that you can strive and step on other people to get to this thing, and you're going to make this success for yourself. And at the end of the day, if you're not being true to yourself and you're not being helpful to your fellow, like, you've lost yourself to get this life that you thought was going to make you happy and make you have self-worth. But we're talking about really dealing with low self-esteem and where this comes from and how it operates, but also, more importantly, how to heal. And so really changing the inner dialogue and recognizing when we have certain ideas that are in the mind, and getting to a place where we could stop running, stop trying to fix it in the world, stop trying to fix it in our experiences, and question these ideas. So, for example, the idea that you know, I had so many different ideas from my childhood. So, like, the idea that I'm lazy, or that I'm ugly, or that I'm fat, or that I'm not worth it, or whatever. I had to get to a place where I asked myself, like, where did you get this idea? And is it possible it's not true? And why is it that you believe so vehemently in the idea? You know, really just lovingly meet myself, just stop and say, hold on a second, is this really true? And just question it, and even the beliefs about my life and the people that I'm supposed to be around, and etc. Like, just really checking with my intuition whether or not this even really resonates anymore. And I used to walk into a room, and if people were laughing, I assumed they were laughing at me. Where did that come from?
Right.
You know, like, instead of looking at myself and saying there's something wrong with me, I just have to be positive. I just have to be positive. I have to do affirmations, and I just have to walk everywhere and pretend, fake it till I make it, and just kind of like cover up all the cause of why I'm feeling this inner discord. Yeah. And just walk into the room and just act like I'm okay, while inside I'm not okay, and any funny look or anything that could trigger me will set that off, and I'll get angry or cry. I'll explode or implode.
Right. I remember when I was newer in recovery, and someone would say, you know, and I had that feeling of like, everybody's laughing, so it must be at me, and somebody would say to me, who are you thinking about right now when you walk in this room? And I'd be like, myself, and they'd be like, so are they. Like, you know, like nobody's actually like thinking about you when you walk in the room, unless, you know, like, there's a connection there. Like, they're not laughing at you. They're not even thinking about you right now. You know, it's not about you. Right. And for me, like, a lot of that changing of the self-talk and the dialogue, like I had to take those thoughts and give them truth. And that was something that was really big for me. Is I actually had these affirmation cards that I would carry around with me. I still have them at home. And when I would think certain things, I would look at the affirmation card and have to remind myself of what the truth was, because I had such a hard time and beat myself up so much. And, you know, a lot of those shame tapes and a lot of those old tapes, like I think about my dad, I remember when he told me that I wasn't planned. You know, like I wasn't a planned birth. But he didn't say you weren't a planned birth. He didn't say you were surprised. He said you were a mistake. And I kept that mistake word in my brain for so long. And I don't think he actually meant the word mistake, but that's the word he used. And I defined that word, you know? And so like taking those kinds of things and giving them truth is really what I had to do in order to like process and, you know, move on and, you know, not go to my coping skills, which weren't the best, like, because, you know, I self-mutilated way into sobriety and found myself in, you know, relationships I shouldn't be in way into sobriety because I was looking for something to make me feel better.
Right. For me, affirmation tapes and writing affirmations on a mirror with lipstick, or you know, giving myself little pep talks and using affirmations. For me, that in and of itself didn't work. That they were great to introduce my mind to a possibility that whatever I was believing wasn't true. But and that part was helpful. But when we tell ourselves that you're beautiful, you're smart, you're intelligent, you're worth it, etc. Like, I'm a champion. I'm worth it. I am beautiful. I'm smart. I have value, or whatever. The part of me that pain body that Eckhart Tolle talks about, the part of me that really believed the opposite would get angry. It would get angry because the story, the narrative of what I've been holding on to, the identity, I was identified with these negative self-concepts. Yeah. You know, and so if there's an amazing spiritual author called Byron Katie, and she does this thing called The Work, and she wrote a book called I think it was called Who Would I Be Without This Story? And the question is, who would I be without this belief that I am lazy or ugly or fat or unworthy or too much? That was another one. And too not enough, and damaged goods. I used to call myself damaged goods, you know, and any rejection would get put into the pot of I'm just damaged goods. Like, who would want me, and who would I be without that story? And so that critical inner parent that keeps telling me I'm not enough, I'm too much, and tells me all those things. I need to develop an inner loving parent that tells me something else. But there has to be, love is gentle. It doesn't attack. And so when I believe something that's not true, the power that it has is because I believe in it. And so I just had to be willing to gently put a question mark on the end of all the things that I was holding on to and say, isn't it possible? Like, I understand what you went through. I understand what other people that you respected as authorities told you. But isn't it possible that there might be something wrong with this idea? That maybe it's not true? And if that window could be open, could we then be open to this affirmation or something else that could suggest that maybe there's another way of looking at the same situation in which you are holding the same interpretation of yourself all this time? Because these toxic relationships, these toxic work experiences, these experiences when we're by ourselves and we can't be alone with ourselves, these are all because we are holding on to ideas that do not resonate and they are not in alignment with our true self, which brings me back to, so we have these two layers of the false self, the one we want to show the world and the one we're afraid to show the world. The guy, the man behind the curtain, the one that says, I can't let you see this. And when people are in recovery, they're usually afraid of looking and doing any kind of real true self-inquiry, like people in 12-step recovery who will do a 4th-step inquiry, an inventory, will be afraid to go to find out. Because for me, I was so afraid that if I looked within, really faced that stuff, because I believed these things as fact. So, period, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, big red neon print, bold lettering. I believed these things. That's why my interpretation of everything was based on these ideas. That's why if a boss called me into their office, it was because they must think that I'm not enough or I'm lazy.
Right.
That's why when somebody says that I'm not interested in dating you or being with you or something, it was like, oh, that's because I'm not thin enough, or I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not sexy enough, or I'm not enough, or whatever. Or why if somebody talks down to me or from like some intellectual high top, I would be like, oh, they don't think I'm intelligent enough or whatever like that.
Yeah.
That's why what was getting triggered was things that I believed. I believed them, so I accepted them as fact, right? And so I needed to go within and look at this stuff, but I was going to meet with the enemy. Like, how you can't change a fact.
Right.
You know, you can't change a fact. So the mind had to be open to them not being facts.
Yeah.
Very gently.
Right.
Very lovingly.
Yeah.
Isn't it possible that you are way more than you are giving yourself credit for? And maybe, and this is even more important, in looking at where these ideas came from, this is not to say to blame other people, because in essence I believed it, and I could still believe it to this day if I'm not super careful and like honor my own intuition. But it's to say, where did it come from? Look at the source. You know, was it coming from little kids who were just figuring themselves out?
Yeah.
Was it coming from a parent who was clearly overwhelmed and had some traumas that she needed to heal from and an addiction that she was like plagued with? Who really should have been the authority on my self-worth?
Right.
And so now that I get to revisit it, I get to say, I would really love to really find out what the truth is then instead. Because had I had somebody tell me something else and I believed it, I would have had a whole different experience. But the emphasis is not on what somebody said to me, because there are many things that people said to me that I did not believe. I didn't take it on. There were things that happened that I was like, yeah, that's not me.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a reason why I was, and as a child, we're even looking for, who am I? Who am I going to be? You know, we're sort of developing our egos, our little fragile egos. We're developing our stories of ourselves, you know. But I was able to say, you know what, you know, just like that adage, hurt people hurt people. My mom had a lot of shame that she projected, you know, and I accepted. And that's just how it is. And so in really like questioning that inner layer of the false self, which behind it, by the way, behind it is the true self, right? Who I really am. And who I really am is beautiful. Who everyone really is beautiful. We are beautiful without all these stories. You know, we just try to pretty up something that's already beautiful by adding stuff to it, and we believe stuff that's not true and dim our own lights. But who we really are, that's our connection consciously with our intuition, and that's where our yes comes from. That's where our no comes from. And when I ask myself whether or not my negative self-dialogue is true, and I say, does it even resonate? my mind is open to be restored to sanity.
Yeah.
And my higher power can reveal something else. And that's why it's so great to be on a path with other people who are so solution oriented and working on themselves, because as they have their shifts in perception that they're not the piece of what that they thought they were, I can then see myself in them and say, well, maybe I'm not either. And then what I get to do today is I get to go, the things I thought about myself were not true, but I believe them and I experienced my life as if they were true. And it's quite possible that whoever's listening, some of you have believed stuff about yourself that's not true.
Yeah.
To be in a position where maybe we can question some of these ideas. And so when we start to use affirmations as a tool, one of the things that often happens is it will trigger up what we really believe, what we think is fact. And when someone has any kind of trauma or self-esteem issues or addictions, oftentimes I have found what happens is they end up judging themselves for not being able to be more positive.
Yeah.
And to recognize that how it works is it's like when we tell ourselves something that's very flowery, and even if it aligns with our true self, even if it is, it shakes the foundation of some faulty narrative that we have about ourselves, and it's not going to feel good for a second. And so the mind goes, that's not true, blah, 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 blah. Like if you've ever been in a situation where you believe something about yourself that's not positive, that's not loving, that's not self-honoring, and somebody gives you a compliment and you want to argue with them.
Yeah.
It's like when we do affirmations and they trigger up what we really think about ourselves, that's all that's happening. And to acknowledge that, okay, that reaction is just because there's a part of me that doesn't believe this and thinks this is foo-fooey. And we don't need to lie to ourselves and say, no, we do believe this, but we can at least say, why don't we believe this? Like, what is going on with us? And start that dialogue and journal and maybe get a therapist or maybe talk to people or do steps or something, but something that would help to shake that up. Because I used to, when somebody would give me a compliment, I used to argue with them. I used to be like, oh, they would say, oh, that's such a beautiful outfit. And I'd be like, yeah, well, I mean, I just got this over at Ross or something, or they'd be like, oh, you look so thin today. And I'd be like, no, man, my weight goes up and down. And like, I couldn't accept, or thank you so much for doing this. You're so intelligent and you're so creative and blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, nah, not, I would always be like, oh, I can't, this is so uncomfortable because there's no way that in my consciousness I could handle all of this. And I didn't trust it. I felt like people who gave me compliments were wanting to manipulate me because I knew the truth about myself.
Right.
And it's true. Some people did give me compliments because they saw how it would lift me and that they could manipulate me. But it's only because I was believing things that weren't true about myself. And so it's extremely important, this topic on self-esteem. It's extremely important to understand that, it all comes down to what it is that we're telling ourselves. One of the other things is that, and I don't know if this is a New York thing or just growing up in a house where people did this, but I would say things and I would act like I'm kidding, and I would say, oh my God, what a loser. I can't believe I just did that. Or Jesus, what an idiot. I can't believe I just did that. Or, oh my God. And because I had so much emotion and so much negative tape made me like a roller coaster ride. I was a fun person to be around. But I would actually joke about myself. I would almost as if that if I put myself down, it would stop other people from doing it. Like, let me take a little bit of the poison so I'm immune to what anybody else is going to do. And so I would say things like, I know I'm crazy, and, or, I wish I could I would be so much prettier if I, lost weight and da-da-da-da. And I would never really I don't know. I just I would just to even make jokes just to even say things like, ha ha ha, I'm crazy,
Yeah.
or whatever. Like, even to do that, there's a part of the mind that doesn't know you're kidding.
Yeah.
And so whatever you say goes back in your ears and affirms all that negative self-image stuff that's underneath the surface, that even gives it the value of even joking like that in the first place.
It took me until my mid-30s to go back to college because of those tapes, because of that idea that I was stupid, because of that idea that,
Right.
and I mean, granted, I did try to go to college when I was 18. I was very high at the time. It did not work out for me. But it took a lot for me to not own those tapes. And then I had statistics, and that class was the death of me. And I didn't think I was going to finish my degree, and for me, having to have people that were encouraging to me and people that helped me along the way, it was even hard to ask for help, and yeah, I feel that I feel those tapes.
There's so many people having fear of failure,
Yeah.
fear of success, and because we call it fear of failure and fear of success, they don't realize that it's shame,
Right.
Which the acronym is should have already mastered everything. I
didn't
I
even
just
know that.
believed, shame should have already mastered everything. So I just believed, I told myself, because of the amount of pain that I was in, that if I was the most beautiful, most intelligent, most accomplished person, that nobody would be able to say anything to me. Can you imagine the pressure?
That's crazy.
And then the self-talk when I'm not perfect?
Yeah.
That's why one of the slogans in recovery is progress, not perfection.
Right.
Because to really get that, we're looking to just keep improving and to grow and to get deeper and to be freer and to heal. And it's not about becoming something. It's really a lot about unlearning a lot of the negative ideas and the coping mechanisms and replacing it with self-love tools and joining and seeing things from a different way and really tapping into our intuition and our true self. And I am so comfortable with who I am today because I don't have an emphasis on the who I seem to be. I just keep wanting to turn it all over and turn into inward to my intuition and just do what feels like the next right thing and not make big stories about it. Even with body image, I used to be so ashamed, I used to have so much shame that I wouldn't leave the house if I gained 8 pounds. And water weight goes up and down and stuff like that. Can you imagine? Walking into a room and being afraid that everybody knows I gained 8 pounds. That's insanity.
That is.
And then for the past, I don't know how many years, my focus has been more so on just being healthy.
Yeah. I feel like I've really started to step into that. And I know you've seen this journey, but a few years ago, I had someone who I don't even think of this person as someone I want to be like, but she said that I wear clothes that look like a trash bag. Like I just wear baggy clothes and I just look like I'm wearing a trash bag all the time. And she didn't even say it to me. She said it to somebody else. And I don't know why he told me that. But I remember thinking, no, I need to change my image now because I can't have people thinking I wear trash bags all the time, and I started to wear some pretty badass clothes, and so, and started to change my image some, but I was still not in a healthy place. I wasn't in a healthy weight. I wasn't in a healthy mindset. And I've gradually been changing my diet and that sort of stuff. But then, even more recently, someone referred to me as big. And I got I was destroyed. I was like, what do you mean? You don't understand how sick I was. I was destroyed. And I had this whole other shame tape going on. And I was like, what can I do to make this different? And I'm trying to impress someone that I don't even know their name. you know? And it was just like this other like level. And so I started moving this year, you know, like, I don't know how much weight I've lost. I don't know if I've actually lost any weight. I know I've lost some fat. I know that my clothes fit differently. I know that my hair looks different. I know that, like, you know, my skin looks different. And it's about like this, like, being healthier is changing the way I look. But is it, or did I just start doing things that made me feel better about myself, so now I feel better about myself?
I think it's that.
Me too.
Because I remember when I was heavier, and the moment that I started to eat better and take care of myself, I immediately started feeling better. And I didn't even lose weight yet or really do anything. But I think there's such a powerful esteem building from the core tool in just doing the next right step rather than... A lot of my shame was coming from, oh, I shouldn't be eating this, but here goes.
Yeah.
Oh, I know I should exercise, but here goes. Or, oh, you know, I've been really not doing this thing, procrastinating this other thing, but I want to do this other thing. And whatever it is, being selfish, being self-seeking, all this stuff, really, it seems like it's going to make our egos better, right? Like they say in recovery that we're egomaniacs with inferiority complexes. You know what that means is that we're trying to be bigger to like make up for the fact that we feel so small inside, so terminally unique, right? And so to really change that I need to be more, I need to be seen, I need all that, to more of a healing, helping, giving, sharing, open-hearted, embracing way. They say in recovery that to keep it, you have to give it away.
Right. And
one of the basic tenets of all recovery is to reach out to another person who's suffering and give them what was freely given to you. And there's something that is inherent in doing esteemable things and being of service and giving to another person and showing up and doing the next right thing. These are the real tools to build self-esteem.
Yeah.
You know, being so self-absorbed and so focused on the inner dialogue of I'm not enough, I'm too much, and everywhere it's like I need something to make up for the fact that I'm not okay. You know, healing these tapes, questioning these ideas, and strengthening the assets within us rather than focusing on the defects, and just really just questioning the negative self-dialogue and starting to look for the positive, looking for the God shots, tuning in and turning things over to a higher power, and being and saying, talk to me and through me, and moving about the world and learning to trust. There's something, I mean, even my self-esteem has gotten repaired just in trusting God. You know, I didn't call it God in the beginning. I had a big issue with it because everybody has their own definition of that word. But I call it God for convenience. And I do feel that my self-esteem, my worth, my value, I'm here to be truly helpful. I want to let go of anything that blocks me from the sunlight of the Spirit. I want to really know who I really am and be good with it. Yeah. And who would I have been without all that story about what somebody else might have thought my worth was? Right.
And I would rather get my worth from what I believe of God than from someone who's fallible, you know?
Yeah.
And this weekend I actually heard someone say that, you know, your hope is anchored in your foundation. So who is your foundation anchored in? And I feel like that's the way with everything. Like if I'm anchored in my higher power, if I'm anchored in what I believe God did to be, whether it's the universe or, you know, whatever it is, then I'm in a better place and I can see things more clearly and I can do things better and I can, find a way to not listen to somebody's judgment because I don't need their judgment.
Right. When you're right with yourself, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks.
Right.
But when you're not right with yourself, then you're when I'm not right with myself, it's like my skin is on inside out.
Yep.
And I'm sticky.
Yeah.
And so what anybody else thinks of me,
it sticks to you.
It sticks to me.
Yeah.
But when I'm right with myself, my skin's on right. I'm good. I'm good. I'm just like, you know what? My narrative of myself isn't based on trying to look good anymore.
Right.
It's based on trying to just be good with myself.
Yeah.
And so there was this whole thing because of when we're really not right with ourselves, we end up believing things that are not true, being super gullible, and or very, very, very untrusting, and confused a lot, and indecisive, and not really feeling like we're grounded, and that we can trust our own intuition and our own instincts. Because if our head tells us that we're too much and not enough in some way, shape, or form, if we have negative self-dialogue, it's very difficult to really, truly feel good about decisions we make and about who we are now in the world. But when we're willing to question it and just detach from all that, even if you're not at a point where you can't question every single tape you might be running at the moment, because they'll come up later, you'll get triggered and it'll go, I believe this, and you'll go, okay, why do I believe this? And you'll be able to deal with it. But just to detach, to know, I'm a very visual person, to know that I have this false self I want to present to the world and the one I want to hide from the world. And then there's my true self. You know what? I want to detach from the stories of the who I think I am and the who I think I'm supposed to be. Just enough to just tune in to who I really am and what really resonates. And even if it's just a small self-concept at first, one that just truly resonates, it's good enough because there's peace, there's freedom in that. And in that is where I meet my higher power through my intuition. And my yes, I have to practice honoring my yes. And my no, I have to practice honoring my no. So if somebody asks me to do something and I feel a no, and I say yes anyway,
that's out of fear.
That feeds my negative self-concept. And if I end up, the fear is actually a byproduct. The fear, I make the decision because I'm afraid.
Right.
But the idea that makes me make that decision is this shame tape.
Yeah.
And so if I say yes when I need to say no, I am feeding myself my negative self-image. I am telling myself, well, Lisa, you would say no if you cared about yourself and you value yourself, but we don't do that. So we're going to go ahead and just put the other person's good higher, or whatever that we think their good is, or what they want, because we're so afraid of being abandoned or whatever. And we just protect this very pitiful self-concept and do the thing that's not for our highest good. But wait, when we actually do say no, and we get to a place where we can matter-of-factly say no, like, I'm not really feeling to do that, but thank you so much for asking me. Or, I don't really have the time to do that, but maybe some other time. Each time we do that, we start putting currency in the bank of our true self-esteem. We're saying, I honor myself in this moment. I hear my no, and I am listening better, and I'm honoring it. And there's this really cool Dr. Seuss saying that say what you mean and mean what you say, because those who matter don't mind, and those who mind don't matter.
Right. Yep.
And so as we start to honor ourselves, and then our yes becomes our beautiful yes.
Yeah.
And as we start to honor our yeses, we start to, even with the fear of, because of shame tapes or whatever, even with the fear of failure, we start to lean into the yeses. Man, the world becomes better, and we start to experience ourselves in it. And in it, our true self-esteem expands. And it's just an amazing experience to not sit there and try to do battle with negative self-images and be surrounded by people who are negative, projecting their negative self-images. Instead, actually just honoring what the intuition says, holding on to nothing but what resonates, saying yes when I feel to say yes, saying no when I feel to say no, and doing what feels like the next right step just only because it feels like the next right step, not because I need somebody to go at a girl. And not because I need to protect myself from something happening that I'm afraid I think is going to happen, but really just truly holding on to that core and trusting that it gets stronger.
Yeah.
And we tune in better.
Yeah.
And we able to then realize that, you know what? I'm good. I used to hate being alone. I used to hate being alone because I was afraid. I was so suicidal for so long that I couldn't stand being alone. And to be completely alone without playing anything, without having any radio or TV or people around or Facebook or anything, and to just be alone, to be able to enjoy being alone because you enjoy your own company, ding, 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 you know, you finally have the self-esteem and the self-love that you didn't have before.
I feel like in strengthening my self-esteem and in strengthening who I am grounded in, it has made me a better employee. You know, it has made, like, I don't get scared that, you know, of
every little thing is going to mean you're getting fired. Yeah.
You know, like, it's made me a better employee. It's made me a better friend. It's made me a better partner. It's made me a better, you know, cat mom. Like, it's just made me better. Like, and doing things that help me be esteemable make me better. And so, like, those are
yeah, every time I put the cart back, I run it over back to Whole Foods, I feel better.
Me too.
And so each thing that we do in recovery to be better, it is progress, not perfection, but each little thing that we do, we get better.
Yeah.
Everything that we do, where we heal our self-dialogue, where we do the work and we make amends, or we really heal our guilt. We really can re-narrate who we are and who we get to be in this world. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed this hour-long talk on self-esteem.
It was so much fun to do an episode just the two of us. We haven't done this since the very first episode.
We haven't had one, just the two of us?
Not since the very first episode.
It's been so many episodes, I completely... But the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any 12-step program or should replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. We hope that you enjoyed this video and that you can send it to other people in the hopes to get the message out that there are so many tools and insights that we can have in our recovery that can really... help to break our chains and fix our relationships and heal our minds. So you can watch us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Amazon Fire TV. You can listen to us on the PHLV radio app, or you can get our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And I think, what are we also on? What was it? Alexa. And all our episodes are on themeetingspace.com. Just click on the Real Recovery Show. Okay, we thank you for joining us today on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and our gracious host, PHLV Radio, here in Las Vegas, Nevada. See you next week.